Hello, everyone, and welcome to Classic Vinyl Podcast. We're your hosts, Justin and Tyler. How are you doing, Tyler?
Thank you again for having me. I'm doing quite well.
Well, it's good to have you here.
Thank you. It's a privilege, as always.
Well, it's a privilege to have you here.
That's not true.
Well, pretty close. So tonight we're going to review Grand Funk Railroad, their second album, Grand Funk, commonly referred to as the Red Album.
Or the funk.
Something like that.
This isn't funk, though.
No, it's not funk.
No, this isn't what you would call funk music.
No, it's epitomizes the rock and roll of the 70s, without a doubt.
Boy, I'll say. These guys are the image of 1970s rock and roll.
So let me start. I'm going to give a little history of the band, just to kind of keep people up to date on them that don't know. They were formed right here in the great US of A in Flint, Michigan in 1969, back when the water was decent there.
Allegedly. Yeah, or at least before the government tried covering up that it wasn't decent there.
Well, you know, and many people say, and I completely agree with this, is you cannot talk about rock and roll from the 1970s without mentioning Grand Funk Railroad.
I believe that's true.
Yeah, and I love 70s rock, and I'm a huge Grand Funk Railroad fan. There's a couple things that bother me about I shouldn't say the band, but what's happened with the band is they've kind of been erased by a lot of people over time. You know, bands like Led Zeppelin and those guys have, you know, they're bigger than ever. Mm-hmm. And these guys were right on track with Led Zeppelin as far as, you know, one of the biggest bands in the 70s. And
really,
it's just unfortunate that, you know, like we've talked about it many a times, as time goes by, somehow certain bands are put up on a pedestal, mm-hmm. and certain bands just kind of fade away. And it's unfortunate that Grand Funk is kind of one of those. Yeah,
because they're new to me. I haven't heard of them before.
Yeah.
But now that I have heard them, yeah, this is very iconic of the 70s.
Yeah, and I know you're familiar with some of their later songs. You may not know it's mm-hmm. them that sings them, but let me go through kind of the rundown. So, you know, they've been touring for like almost 55 years now, multiple lineups, but they originally started as the power trio of Mark Farner, who was guitars, keyboards, harmonica, and lead vocals, Mel Shocker, who was bass, and Don Brewer, who was drums and lead vocals later on. And like I said, they were a power trio, very, very comparable to Cream, Jimi Hendrix Experience, like that, you know. And as they tour now, Shaker and Don Brewer are still in the band. Mark Farner is no longer with the band, which is unfortunate. Mm-hmm. The lead singer now is Max Carl, who is a veteran from 38 Special.
Oh.
So still a good singer, but it's not Mark Farner. And as we'll find out later on the Red Album that we're reviewing tonight, Mark Farner writes pretty much everything but mm-hmm. one cover song, and he sings everything. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, it's unfortunate he's not there, but maybe one day, right?
Hey, he's got a voice, and it's a really good one. I don't know what the issue is there, why he's left the band, but dang it, Mr. Farner, if you get the band back together and go and tour, we will bring all of our listeners and come see you.
Well, and I would love to see Grand Funk.
Yeah.
They're still touring, obviously, but I really don't want to see them without Mark Farner. To me, that's the key to it, and mm-hmm. hopefully that happens before they pass away, because unfortunately all the music I listen to and all the people I want to see, they're mm-hmm. starting to drop off.
That's what happens.
It is. Mm-hmm. So Grand Funk Railroad was actually a play on words. They were named after the Grand Trunk Western Railroad, which had a line that ran right through Flint, Michigan.
Oh.
And so it was kind of funny because it's, you know, a lot of people were stealing the signs of the railroads and hanging them up in their rooms and things at the time. It was quite nice. Common. But, you know, one of the injustices for this band is that they're not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
True.
And, you know, they've released 6 platinum albums and 7 gold certified albums, and they released all these between 1969 and 1976, which isn't anything to balk about. I mean, that's pretty impressive. Mm-hmm. They're very well known for their arena rock style, and I mean, they've toured extensively for years. And, you know, they were big into the arena things. In fact, they equaled the Beatles at selling out Shea Stadium at 50,000 plus people, and they sold it out in less than 72 hours, which was quicker than the Beatles.
Oh, my.
So, and even though they hadn't had a hit single in England, they sold out the Royal Albert Hall as well. Mm-hmm. And so, they're a pretty impressive group, but time has kind of forgotten them a little bit.
These guys should be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Wow.
Considering the kind of people and artists that are, yes, they should be. Mm-hmm. They deserve it. And, so we go to their first album. It actually was certified gold. It reached number 27 in the U.S. It sold over 1 million copies. It was called On Time. Mm-hmm. But, historically, the critics did not like this band.
Why is that?
And nobody can really explain why, but they just simply panned this band as a horrible band. But, I think because they consider musically dumb is what I've read. Just thought they were loud and annoying because they were the hard rock of the time. But, they really are a no bullshit band, heavy rock band for the working class man.
Yeah,
no doubt about it. And, they went directly, their success is because they went directly to the working class man and did the big tours, and they basically went without the guidance of the so-called experts, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And screw them, because who needs them?
Yeah, that's one thing they've proven.
Yeah, so we're going to be reviewing their second album tonight, the album titled Grand Funk, but it's commonly referred to as the Red Album because it's red. Mm-hmm. But on their third album, Closer to Home, which Closer to Home is one of my favorite songs of theirs, but that album reached number 22 here in the U.S., number 21 in Canada, and Closer to Home, the single, the song I liked, reached number 6 on the Billboard Top 200. On their fifth album, E Pluribus Funk, which is an amazing album name.
I love that name.
That album reached number 5, and the single off that album, Phoenix, reached number 7. And then an album this will probably be fairly familiar to you, We're an American Band, which was the name of the album. It reached number 2 in the U.S., and then the single, We're an American Band, reached number 1. So, and it also had a single, Walk Like a Man, that reached number 19. Mm-hmm. So Shining On was their 8th album, and it reached number 5, and it had the hit The Locomotion on it, which was, it was a cover of a Jerry Goffin and Carole King song, and that song also reached number 1 in the U.S. and Canada. So
we've heard their names before.
Yes, we have. Yeah. We've talked about them before. So on their 9th album, All the Girls in the World Beware, that album reached number 10, and it had Some Kind of Wonderful on it, which reached number 3, and it had also the single Bad Time, which reached number 4. So, they had 4 more albums after that, but not with as much chart success. Yeah. So it's amazing how much chart success they've had and how much touring success they've had, considering that they were panned so horribly by the critics. And for some reason, it still continues today in a lot of, in a lot of ways, and it's unfortunate because they are an amazing band.
Well, these guys, they know their fan base, proving that it's not the critics that are buying albums, it's the working man, the hairy, unwashed, huddled masses. Yeah, those are the people that are buying and listening to the albums.
Well, those are the people that matter, right?
Yeah, I don't even think the critics buy the albums that they critique. They're given them by the band, saying, "Oh, please tell us what you think."
Well, I think if you put yourself in the shoes and the time, Grand Funk, they're certainly an instrumental band that played heavy and loud.
Yeah.
And I don't think that was received as well as other bands. And I think maybe because their lyrics are a little sophomorish at times, I think that played a part into it.
Yeah.
But that part doesn't bother me at all because I love the music.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm pretty sure if you put yourself in the shoes of the time, they're going to be platform shoes.
Most likely.
Platform boots, yeah. These under bell bottoms, they're skin tied up top and super wide on the bottom. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, with them being panned so horribly by critics, I mean, their success is, it's self-telling, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they're an amazing band. They're one of my favorite bands. I really do enjoy them, and
Yeah.
I hope everybody else can too.
I mean, I may consider myself to be a critic and say, well, I don't like Elvis Presley, but at the same time, 50 million fans can't be wrong.
Yeah, I mean, that's what really matters, right?
Exactly, and that's like kind of the theme of the Grand Funk Railroad. These guys are a people's band.
Yeah. So let's get on to the album. So Grand Funk's second album it's Grand Funk Railroad's second album, and the name of the album was Grand Funk, but it's commonly referred to as the Red Album.
Uh-huh.
And I think anybody that's a Grand Funk Railroad fan knows what the Red Album is,
It's not the blue one.
No, it's not the blue one.
Yeah.
So released at the end of December in 1969 by Capitol Records. Of course, this consisted of the power trio of Mark Farner, Mel Shocker, and Don Brewer. And so they recorded this in Cleveland, and it was produced and engineered by Ken Hammond, who I've never heard of, but he did a good job. I think this album was, I think they wanted to capture the live rock and roll, raw garage band type of feel. And if that's what they were going for,
they captured it.
Yeah, they did a good job by it, and this album, like the band, was loved by the fans and hated by the critics.
Yeah.
This album was panned. It's horrible by the critics, but it did reach number 11 on the Billboard Top 200 chart with over 1 million copies sold, which isn't shabby at all.
Yeah, so I mean that's quite the middle finger to the critics.
Yeah, it really is.
I mean, really, who cares what you guys think? We're people like us. We're selling albums. Yeah,
exactly. And like I said earlier, it was heavily influenced by other power trios like Cream and the Jimi Hendrix Experience. But there's certainly a heavier version of those, and I do enjoy them more than Cream and Jimi Hendrix. And
yeah, they're pretty heavy.
Yeah, and this album really helped cement Grand Funk Railroad and their reputation as one of the heaviest bands of the era. And you just listened to it for the first time.
Yeah,
just a minute ago, right? And you can see why.
Oh yeah, these guys. I'll say one thing: that their instruments are well used.
Yeah, I think you get that in the trio, in a power trio like this. Is I think that's one of the common things is that you have to, showcase each instrument individually. You don't have the other instruments, multiple guitars and keyboards, although they did use keyboards later on in their careers.
Yeah.
But, you've pretty much got drums, bass, guitar, and every once in a while a harmonica.
Yeah, that term showcase is the perfect term for this because that's exactly what these guys do. Each one takes their turn going front and center and showing off, playing the crap out of the bass or the drums and then going back to the, playing the beat and the rhythm of the background while somebody else showcases.
Well, and some people have said this about Grand Funk, that they're very raw and live and kind of sloppy sounding, which I actually 100% agree with.
Sure.
But to me, that's what makes them good. It sounds like a good jam band that doesn't have to hit all the perfect notes, but
it gives it character.
Yeah, it sounds amazing to me, This album was really only a success in the U.S. and Canada and mildly in Australia. So, and they did only release one single off the album, which is your so-called song, Mr. Limousine Driver.
I love that song.
It only reached 97 in the U.S. on the Billboard charts and moderately better in Canada at 92. And the one thing about this album is the fuzzy bass. It's throughout this. I love it. I mean, this bass is fuzzed up all to hell, and it sounds good. It's what makes this album. I mean, so I think it's time to move on to the album. We'll get on to side one of the vinyl.
Yep.
And it opens up with Got This Thing on the Move. And speaking of the fuzz bass, this opens with the fuzz bass, and it kind of plays the lead throughout the song, right?
Maybe that's what the funk is that fuzz on the bass. It makes it all funky.
I don't know. I really
love it, though.
I really enjoy it. Now, like most songs on this album, this one's written by and sang by Mark Farner. This song's got good vocals on it. Like I said, I love the lead fuzz bass. It's got a good little guitar solo in the middle, and then the fuzz bass kicks in heavy again. And right about halfway through the song, it has like a little breakdown, and then it just turns into kind of a jam.
Yeah.
It's kind of a going theme with Grand Funk's, songs. And especially, if you enjoy these at all.
Kind of like that outro that's just instrumental for the last couple minutes or so.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
These guys just can't help themselves but devolve into a jam session at the end of every song.
No, and the one thing I can say, what I was going to say is if you like this, listen to this album and like it, then you need to listen to them live as well, because they're another band similar to 10 Years After in that way, which I feel, even though their album tracks are strong, very strong, and this is a very good album, they play much better live because of that, because they're a jam band. They're very raw with everything they do. They're very heavy, and I don't know, it's pretty impressive to me, especially going back in time as a trio. You don't have all these other instruments. You don't have backing tracks to fill out like they do now, and auto tune on the vocals and different things like that. This is a straight rock and roll band, that filled arenas worldwide. So mainly the U.S., but I mean they went straight to the fans, and it shows. But their music's the reason for it, right?
Well, yeah, these guys, each of them, is really talented at their instruments. Even Mark Farner, maybe his lyric writing's not very strong, but his voice is incredible.
Yeah, and then we'll talk about it. That's kind of a going theme throughout. Is the lyrics are pretty straightforward. They don't leave a lot to the imagination like some of the other bands we talked about. But
yeah, it's not very poetic.
No, and you don't. There's nothing really to read into. There's a couple of them, but most of them are pretty straightforward. So
yeah.
This is a really good song to start the album off of. It's strong.
Yeah.
The bass is strong. It's got good guitar work in it. And it breaks into that breakdown solo at the end and jams out. And it's just an excellent song.
Well, and that bassist, let's see, Mel Shocker?
Yeah.
Shocker, yeah.
Shocker, Shaker.
Shaker, whatever. He plays the bass. He doesn't just, thump it and keep the beat. He plays the bass.
Kind of.
Same with the drummer.
Kind of similar
Don
to
Brewer, yeah.
John Entwistle in The Who, where the bass a lot of times is the main instrument. It's instead of having a lead guitar, you have a lead bass, so the guitar can play the little licks under it.
Totally, yeah. The bass is the dominant in plenty, just as much as the drums are.
Yeah,
these guys play every instrument that they're doing. They're not just using the drums to keep the beat and the rhythm here. These guys they're playing the crap out of their instruments.
Yeah, they do an amazing job on this, and I love that song, and it's a good start to the album without a doubt. So we move on to the next song. Please Don't Worry About No Jury.
Yeah.
There's so many of us anyways. So another song written by Mark Farner, although this time Don Brewer helped him write it, and it's sang by Farner again. And
well, someone had to hold the crayons, right?
Yeah. So this song, to me, by looking at the lyrics and listening to the lyrics, seems like kind of a fight against the man, the young man blues type of thing. There's plenty of us here.
Well, and this is a rising generation thing. This is a song from the 70s where you've got, the crew cut, militaristic dad that's telling you, hey, pull up your pants and get a haircut. No, these guys are saying, just be yourself.
Do you think, how do you decipher, please don't worry about no jury? Do you think that's literal, or do you think that's just...
Sometimes, but, these guys are very literal, so probably they're saying it literally, don't worry about getting arrested. I don't know, maybe it's a protest of the Vietnam War. I didn't really think about that, but it's just don't worry about being judged.
Yeah. And that's the way I take it, more along the lines of don't worry, about being judged, because there's so many of us anyways. So
the man's always going to tell you what to do, but just be yourself anyway.
Yeah. So getting into the music on this song, it's got the same fuzzy bass again on the intro, which is amazing. It plays again like the lead on here. The lyrics are kind of rudimentary on this song, but I think that's what makes it good.
Yeah.
And it's got an amazing guitar solo in this from Mark Farner.
Oh, yeah. His licks are really cool.
Yeah, it's a pretty short song, but in my opinion, it was kind of strange that they released Mr. Limousine Driver as the single. To me, this song would have made much more sense as a single because it's kind of got a hook to it. And
Yeah, I agree. This one, it's more relatable, I'll tell you that. Mr. Limousine Driver, we'll talk about that song later, but it's not as relatable as this one.
Although it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah. No, it's very straightforward, but it's not relatable like this song is, where, everybody has been, part of that outcast or unpopular crowd, or, had their parents, nagging them to act more like the previous generation before them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's more relatable that way.
Yeah. So let's move on to the next one. Highfalutin Woman.
Aha.
Now, another song written by Farner and sang by Mark Farner as well. It's a song apparently about a fast, pompous woman, kind of I would say, well, fast is probably the best way to explain her.
Oh, yeah. And I was going to say, Mr. Farner, he really belts it out in this song.
Yeah, now this song, to me, is the one. This is probably my least favorite song on the album, although I like it quite well. I know that sounds strange, but I really like this album. This song does remind me of 10 Years After because it's more bluesy.
Yeah.
It's a heavier blues, but it's more bluesy, and this song sticks out to me as not really fitting in with the rest on the album as much.
Yeah, I'll tell you, this is the song writing is bluesy, but the instrumentals aren't, and that's what's kind of cool about this band is that there's that dissonance of what they're singing about or what they're singing versus how they're playing, because a lot of their playing is just real peppy.
Yeah, and I mean, don't get me wrong, I really do enjoy this song. To me, it's just, it kind of doesn't fit in as well. No. It's got an amazing heavy intro to it, and like I said, it's bluesy, but it's like a heavy blues. It's got the fuzz bass in it again, which it works perfect for me.
Yeah,
I think I want to record something with that fuzz bass. I really enjoy it.
Yeah, and I guarantee you that all of these guys have sideburns, and I'm pretty sure at least one of them has an afro.
I don't know about the afro, but I'm pretty sure on the sideburns.
Yeah.
But I don't know how much sideburns made a difference because their hair was long, so you probably couldn't see their sideburns.
I gotta say, these guys are just, the 70s.
Yeah, but
they've got the wingtip collars, open shirt with gold chains.
You don't have a clue what these guys look like either,
do you? I have no idea.
Yeah, because...
but I feel like I can describe them.
Because one thing we can say is, out of all the albums we've reviewed, you've always known 2-3 songs off the albums.
Sure.
And you listened to this a little over an hour ago or whatever, and you'd never heard any of these songs.
Yeah, this is all of them. I mean, all of these are new to me.
Yeah. So you're definitely going to have to listen to it a little more to tell me what you think, because this is an album to me that grows on you the more you listen to it.
I believe that.
And then you, especially to appreciate it, need to listen to it live as well. So that moves us on to your song, or at least the song you turned to me and said was your song when we were listening.
Mr. Limousine Driver.
Yeah, Mr. Limousine Driver. Another song written by Farner and sang by Farner. And the lyrics on this are straightforward as can be.
I'll say.
Basically Farner explaining that he wants to have a good time with a groupie, right?
Yeah. And I wrote down here that he should have also asked the limousine driver to give him a jar of mayonnaise too, just to add some intrigue and make people wonder what did...
No, wait. Oh, you mean in the lyrics?
In the lyrics,
okay,
yeah. Like literally ask for it, because he's so straightforward. He's basically saying, hey, there's a girl over there, And he repeatedly tells this, you know, you need to open up the door and let her in, man.
Yeah, and then don't worry about what's going on in the back.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty straightforward. And as the limousine driver's trying to make it on time or whatever, he's being paid to get him to the, you know, to the stadium or wherever it is at a certain time.
To the venue.
And Farner's trying to get him to pull over and let this hot little chickadee in so he can have his way with her in the back of the limo.
Hot little chickadee is a great thing because that's and I point that out just because the writing of this is so reminiscent of the era that you've got certain eras and terms that were real popular at that time, and you hear that throughout these guys' music. So, you know, calling girls chicks or chickadee, yeah, that's very much a term of the time. Kind of like in the 80s, it would have been gnarly or rad. In the 90s to 2000s, da bomb was a big thing. And so I really get a kick out of hearing that kind of language that's real popular.
Well, so going into the actual music of this song, it's got a good intro with the bass and drums, and it starts with the bass and drums, and then it kicks into the guitar, and then it kicks into the fuzz bass again. Funny enough, I really like the singing harmonies on this, and I think Mark Farner, I can say a few things about him. He's not talked about very often with great guitarists, and he should be.
He really should, yeah. But his picking is amazing.
Yeah, it's kind of messy in a way, but like in a good way, because, you know, Clapton's messy, Jimmy Page is way messy.
Yeah.
It's not a clean solo where he's hitting all the perfect notes, but it sounds perfect.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, his singing isn't bad, and this song has actually got some good harmonies in it.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think he's underrated as a singer as well.
Yeah.
So, but he harmonizes in this with Don Brewer, and to me, it sounds good. You know, I really like this song.
Yeah.
I think it's a must-have song on his album.
He has this lyric in there where he, speaking of the language of the time, going back to that, he said, "I know you know where it's at." You know, saying, "Hey, you know what's up." That would be our modern equivalent. So I'm not sure that Mr. Limousine Driver really does know what's up, because it's a big, long, couple-minute long song that he's telling him over and over again, hey, you know, if he knows what's up, then why does he have to write a whole song telling him what to do? And I think that Mr. Limousine Driver, he just doesn't get paid enough, in his estimation, to put up with this rock star's bullshit.
Well, that could be it, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to say, but this is the single that reached number 97 in the U.S. and number 92 in Canada, so it didn't do really well as a single, but it's charted higher than any single I've ever released.
Exactly. It's still a fun song. I mean, it's fun to listen to.
It's a fun song, and this is where the lyrics are definitely more sophomorish, and I don't mean that in a bad way. It's just they're straightforward. They're not real in-depth.
Yeah, it's not your... he's not Cyrano de Bergerac trying to woo Roxanne. Roxanne is not his target audience.
That's a good way to put it. So just don't worry about what's going on in back.
Yeah. The kind of girl that's going to be falling for these guys is, oh, hey, there's a guy in a limousine that says he likes my boobs.
Yes.
Yeah.
He's a rock star.
Yeah.
Let me in.
Yeah.
So that brings us to the next song that closes out side one on the album, which is In Need.
Yeah.
So this song is another song, of course, written and sang by Mark Farner. I take it as it's about moving on with your life, you know, getting older and moving on. It's a straight jam song. It goes into a very long, extended solo by Farner. But to start off the song, you know, it's got a good bass line on it. But where I really like the bass, about the middle of the song, there's like a little bass solo, like a mini solo, and then it kicks in with the harmonicas, and then it transitions into, the guitar. So
this song really showcases all of the individual instruments, the way that we were talking earlier.
Yeah, it does. So. And... I think if I have one complaint about this song, it's probably the lyrics. I find the lyrics a tad bit corny in this song, but they don't really, it doesn't hurt the song for me, because to me this song is the jam is what makes it good, you know.
Yeah.
And from about the middle to the end of the song, it's a straight jam, and I love the pulsating bass line that's just sitting there pulsating like a beating heart, you know.
Yeah, because it makes it feel like it's gently picking up the tempo, like speeding up, but it never does. It always holds back.
Yeah.
And like it does this really cool thing. I've never heard this before in a song, and I fell in love with it immediately. It's like, wow, this is like, it feels like you're hitting the gas pedal and your engine's revving, but it never redlines it. It never goes above like 5, you know?
Well, if anybody's wondering about Mark Farner's guitar skills, I mean, listen, not only this album, but this song, you know, the jamming he does towards the end is amazing, and he's a highly underrated guitar player, and I think anyone that follows Grand Funk probably knows that.
Oh, in my notes here, I wrote, this man says he can play guitar without ever uttering a word. He shows you he can play the guitar.
Well, and it's kind of funny you say that, because Grand Funk, they've got a lot of good songs, right? A lot of good lyrics and things like that. Their lyrics do get a lot better moving on from this album, but what makes this stick out is the music.
Yeah.
They could easily be a jam band with no lyrics, and I would listen to them.
For sure.
You know, but sometimes the lyrics being straightforward is a good thing too, because there's no deciphering into what they mean or whatever. It's just a different thing, you know. It's just a different thing. This is just a pure rock and roll band.
And once again, it's using the language of the day. The lyric in there, ain't nobody gonna know about my bread. It's like, nobody can. I'm not gonna tell anybody how much I get paid. But
yeah, I like using bread. You just don't hear people say bread
it's
anymore.
an old word,
you know? Yeah.
To describe money.
Or coin.
Yeah.
You know, or something like that. So I should say. And so now we're going to flip over to side 2 of the vinyl, and it starts out with Winter and My Soul, another song written by Mark Farner, sang by Mark Farner. You're going to hear me say that quite a bit. You know, basically about sadness about the winter coming on, you know, all the color changes, all the changes in the weather, everything, and the depression it brings. You know?
That seasonal depression. I don't know about you, like, tons of people get it.
Yeah, I've kind of got it right now, to be honest with you. But, you know, and I've wondered if, you know, it's kind of a euphemism for something else, but knowing the way Farner writes, it probably isn't. It's probably pretty straightforward.
He's very straightforward, and I think what I like about this song is the way that it's written. It's very plain and straightforward, and so I think it really is just that he gets the blues or gets seasonal depression when winter comes on and the whole world gets blanketed with snow and everything's white and gray and black.
Well, and something I didn't think about, you know, they're from Flint, Michigan, which has very similar winters to what we have here in Utah. So, you know, that could be the same thing. You know, winter's coming on. What are we going to do now? You know, this sucks. And
because there's no grain. There's no, I mean, you get other times of the years, you got flowers of all different colors.
Yeah.
You got, like, you know, fields of grain that are yellow. And you got all these different colors, blue skies and everything. In the wintertime, everything's gray and black and white. It's just so plain.
So getting to the music on this, it starts with a decent intro. It's got an amazing bass line on it, but this is one of the few songs that the bass line doesn't fuzz up. It's just kind of standard bass, you know.
Once again, it's that seasonal depression thing where it's just so simple and plain, nothing fancy.
I can tell you something really interesting about this song. Mark Farner's voice follows the instrumentation.
Yeah.
And that's very similar to what Ozzy Osbourne does with Black Sabbath. Like if you hear I Am Iron Man, he follows the instrumentation the way he sings, you know.
Yeah.
Later years when you had different singers with Black Sabbath, they weren't the same, and so you need to listen to them and hear that. But Farner follows the instruments just like Ozzy did, or Ozzy follows them like Farner does. It's kind of interesting how on this whole song he does that, but it's really interesting the way he does it, and I think it's pretty much only on this song, right?
Yeah, and the lyrics on this song are real sad and moany. But the music is real upbeat and peppy, and so there's a little juxtaposition there.
Yeah, there is, but like we said, those lyrics, they're pretty straightforward about it, and it's another good jam song. I mean, it kicks out in a jam from the middle to the end again, and you know what I like about this album is something that we've talked about on other albums. You don't have songs fading into other songs on this.
No, you don't.
And I generally don't like those song fades. You know what I mean? I really don't. Unless it happens to be an album like Quadrophenia or something like that it follows a plot and they have to fade in to do whatever. But sometimes
like a rock opera, yeah,
sometimes fading's just kind of strange. So I do like that about this album. But Winter in My Soul, you know, I really like the song.
Yeah,
I like the lyrics on this. They're not, you know, I found the lyrics kind of corny on In Need, but to me the musicianship on it stood out.
Yeah, he sings, I think it was earlier on in the song, about being in a cold room or sleeping in a cold room. And, I mean, there's something about wintertime. I don't mind sleeping in a cold room in a warm bed, but sleeping in a cold room in a cold bed where you're trying to warm up and you just can't, that's miserable.
Yeah.
So I totally get what he's saying there.
Yeah, maybe his parents didn't have enough to pay for the furnace or something.
Could be, yeah.
So, yeah, good song. Really good, you know, musically too. So,
yeah.
That moves us to the second song, which not to be confused with Black Sabbath song Paranoid. This song's called Paranoid. Another song written and sang by Farner. You know, this is a very dark and menacing song. Kind of weird. Even the music is kind of dark and menacing in this one, and it's about being followed and watched by someone, but you don't know who and you don't know why.
Yeah. Well, and it starts off like with the radio entry.
Yeah, a radio voice, almost like on Wish You Were Here, and then
that cuts into this air raid siren.
Yeah, like an air raid siren, then some kind of wind noise or something, and then it cuts right into that fuzz bass again. Comes in heavy, and
that fuzz bass, it sounds like an alarm. Beep, beep.
Yeah, well, it's. I think they've got heavy fuzz on it, and I think it's got the wah pedal or something on it too, because so it does that wah, you know, but it plays lead again through much of the song, and you know, but then in the middle, you know, it's got excellent guitar work by Farner again.
It's got that scream in there.
Yeah. Good guitar solo in the middle, and it kicks in with that fuzz bass heavy again.
Yeah.
The one thing I can say about this is this song is probably my favorite on the album. I would say we'll get to that when we get to the end, but this song is excellent on the album, but much, much better live.
I believe that.
Yeah.
But, oh man, this song, like, covering paranoia, you know, just because you're paranoid doesn't mean they're not out to get you.
Well, and I think
that's what this song feels like.
And I think once again the lyrics are pretty straightforward on this. You know, I don't know if Mark Farner had a problem with someone following him around or.
Well, then he gets like really like almost existential at the end, where he's like, let's see, I wrote it down here. He said, "Did you ever think it could be you waiting just outside the door? Like, maybe you're the one who's creeping on somebody else rather than someone else creeping on you." It's weird.
So do you think he's the one creeping? Is that what you're saying?
I don't know. I'm wondering, because he's so straightforward about it. Is he thinking, well, am I making somebody else feel this way? Am I creeping on somebody else? I mean, maybe that's just me internalizing it, because I'm very self-conscious about, am I making somebody else feel uncomfortable?
See, as I've documented well, and as you know, I'm not a lyric guy as much as you, but you're getting me into the lyrics trying to figure out what they mean. And I think with most of Farner's, they're pretty...
Yeah, they're very cut and dried, aren't they?
Yeah, I think they really are. I think maybe they get a little more complex in his later albums. Yeah. In their later albums, I should say. But
you're right, this album, sophomore's a great term for it, yeah.
Yeah, but it's definitely, the lyrics aren't the best, but they're great. He's a good singer.
Yeah.
And the music essentially overrides all that, without a doubt.
And I'll say that that's really exemplary in their, or exemplified by their outros. I wrote at the end of this song, I said, this band not only loves outros, they married outros and had its children. And that's my thoughts on Paranoid.
Wow, interesting. Yeah. I never knew you could have an outro's child, but
these guys did. They're in love with outros.
So that brings us to the last song of the album, which it's the only one I'm not going to say written by Mark Farner, but it is sang by Mark Farner, and it's actually a cover of Eric Burdon the Animals' song called Inside Looking Out. Now, Eric Burdon and the Animals, when they released this song, it did have mild success in the UK and reached number 12 on the charts. Wow. But when Farner got this song, they actually changed the instrumentation quite a bit on it, and Farner added quite a few references to marijuana, talking about reefer and nickel bags and things like that. It is the longest song on the album, just under 10 minutes. And this song is, number one, been a staple of their live shows for almost 50 years. And I see why, because to me, this is my favorite song of theirs played live. And this, although is a good album track, this song, like many, is much more. It's good both ways, but live, I think because Grand Funk is such a jam band in a way, it just translates to live music better. That's just my opinion. And 10 years after is very similar to that.
Yeah.
They translate to live music, and and I've always thrown the Who in there. I consider the Who probably the greatest live band of all time. But as much as I love the Who, I probably enjoy most of their live stuff better than I do their album cuts. So even though I love their album cuts, but Grand Funk's the same way. So this is, it's got good singing in it. This has got good. The musicianship in this is great. It's I try and decipher the lyrics, and these are probably the lyrics that are the least straightforward, and I guess that's because they're not written by Farner. So
I gotta keep that in mind.
Because this one makes me think inside looking out. Is this a guy in jail? Is this a guy that's high? Is this a guy, on LSD trip or something, that he's inside himself looking out? Who knows?
You better come on up and get down with me.
And maybe even Grand Funk doesn't know what it means, because they're not the ones that wrote the song, but it's about being locked inside oneself somehow, right? And, I don't know what to say about this song, but musically, it's amazing.
For sure. This band loves to play. And I get the feeling that these guys, if they threw a concert and didn't sell a single ticket, they'd still go up on stage and they would play just for the janitor or nobody. They just love, and they love jamming.
Yeah, that's what's great about the band, and when you look into the lyrics, like pain and blisters on my mind and hands, that's pretty complex lyrically for something Farner would be writing at this point,
For sure.
And I joke about it because I really enjoy Farner's lyrics. I do.
Yeah.
They're just not complex.
Hey, Mr. Limousine Driver, let the groupie into the back of the car. Come on.
But Farner does an excellent job singing on this song. It's got amazing guitar work in the middle. Keeps a simple beat in the middle to keep time, and then the fuzz bass just keeps hitting boom, boom.
It ends like a fireworks show.
Yeah,
That's what it sounds like.
But the guitar work in this is amazing. Once again, showcasing Farner's work. Need to go check out all Grand Funk's work, especially live, because a lot of studio work can be done, but those can be overdubbed and things can be done. But when you hear them live, that's when you really know what kind of guitarist these guys are.
Oh,
and
for sure.
He does an amazing job, and I respect power trios like this because you don't have all the extra fill from multiple instrumentation from other band members. Now they did later on in their career. They moved up to a 5-piece and filled it in with a lot of keyboards and things, and I enjoy that as well. It's just not as raw, as this is. And Inside Looking Out, damn good song.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, when you talk about getting other filler instruments in there, it starts to sound like an orchestra, and sometimes it is an orchestra filling.
Well,
in the
yeah,
back of it.
sometimes it is.
But this, when you get the power trio, it's fun to listen to, and it you just kind of feel like you're in the garage there with them, kicking back, drinking a beer. That's what this album is this is for listening to unwind on your drive home. Go sit on your front porch, crack open a cold beer, and just, enjoy some good music.
Yeah, I'd certainly like to see him in a stadium too, but I think I'm going to hold off till Farner's back with the band if it ever happens.
Yeah, you better get back with the band, Mr. Farner, because we need to come see you live before you die.
Or maybe I'll just have to go see Mark Farner solo live.
Okay. We'll kidnap him. No, you can't say that on.
So let's go to winners and losers on this. Why don't you tell me, and the album review, why don't you tell me your favorite and least favorite songs on the album and what you review the album?
Let's see. I gotta look back through the different songs because I'm not all that familiar yet with these guys, but I intend on getting familiar with them.
Well, you certainly need to give this album some more play on Apple, Spotify, things like that, because to me, this album is one that grows on you. Yeah. It did for me. It wasn't one of my favorites at first, but I really enjoy it now, and it's, a must play for me.
I think I'm going to say that for my least favorite, I'm going to go with Highfalutin Woman. And I'm not sure that I did that on take one, but the more I think about this and let it stew on my brain, the more I'm thinking that's the song that just doesn't really grab me. And really, I've got the fewest notes written about that one, so I don't think I was that inspired by that one. The one I like the most, Mr. Limousine Driver, is just a fun ride, but I think the one that I like the most is going to be Inside Looking Out.
Yeah, it's an excellent song. So what do you rate the album?
Out of 1 to 10, 1 being horrible and 10 being amazing, this is way up there. I'm going to give it a solid 8, possibly even go as high as 9.
So we'll call that an 8.5 from Tyler.
Okay.
So for me, I actually agree with you as my least favorite song, which is Highfalutin Woman. Okay. And I really like the song, and like I told you, it reminds me of 10 Years After, who is another one of my favorite bands, but I just don't feel like that song. It's too bluesy, and it doesn't seem to fit the hard rock aspect of this album. I enjoy the song. It's not a skipper for me. In fact, there's no skippers on this album for me. I like all of them, but that's just the song that doesn't seem to work as well as the others. Is my favorite song definitely would be Inside Looking Out, but just because it's a song that is a cover, I won't pick that. I will pick Paranoid is my favorite song just because it's dark and menacing, and I love the bass. I love the guitar work in it.
I do have a lot of notes written around Paranoid.
It's an excellent song, and that's probably my favorite song written by them, but my favorite song on the album truly is Inside Looking Out, but Paranoid as well. And I rate the album a solid 9. It's a must listen for me, and it'll always be in my playlist one way or another, so it's a great album, and Grand Funk is a great band that's been robbed as far as the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, however much that means anyways.
If you like 1970s rock and roll and you like the everything about the era, the language, the sideburns, the platform boots, the bell-bottom pants, put these guys in your collection because you're going to love them.
See, and I might have to disagree with you on that a little bit. I don't think if you like 1970s, I think if you like jam out rock and roll in general.
Yeah, that too.
And respect, music, because this is really, they're every bit as heavy as Black Sabbath.
Oh, for sure.
They're just not as dark.
No. They're fun. These guys are light and upbeat in their music.
Well, and other jam bands of the time like Foghat and, the James Gang, and I'm trying to think Traffic and bands like that. These guys are much heavier than those guys, and I think this helped lead to some of the heavier rock that you get with like Judas Priest and... Montrose and a lot of those bands like that. And so I think they're really important, and I think most music people will agree, and there's always going to be the group of people that hate the band, right? And the group of the people that support them nonetheless.
And that's fine, you can be one of those critics. But if you punch a clock like I do, if you're blue collar, these guys are your people. They write for you. They write for me.
Well, and there's something endearing to me, even on the album tracks, but especially live, but their album tracks too, they have that live jam feeling, like they're not going over it with a fine-tooth comb and re-recording things and making them perfect. It sounds raw. And that's what I like about Grand Funk, is they're just a good rock and roll band.
Raw, but these guys are talented, and that's what's so good about it, is like you want to go see somebody who it's kind of like the difference between seeing theater versus a movie. Like the movie, you're getting the best take that the editor was able to piece together from what the director and the actors put up on the film in the first place. But in a theater, you got one take. You don't retake the scenes over and over again. So you're getting live actors that are super talented, and they're showcasing that raw talent by going out and putting it on stage, doing it live where they can't make mistakes. And if they do make mistakes, let's see how unnoticeable we can make it. Exactly. Yeah. And that's what these guys are.
So that's our review of the Grand Funk Railroad and their Red album. Amazing album. Give it a listen. Let us know what you think. Yeah. I mean, we'd certainly like to know what you think of Grand Funk. And reach out to us. ClassicVinylPodcast@gmail.com. We'd certainly like any suggestions, good or bad. We'd like suggestions on what albums you would like to hear us review. And reach out to us on Instagram at Classic Vinyl Podcast. Reach out to us on Twitter at Classic Vinyl Pod.
And, unless it's Miley Cyrus, we'll review it. We don't do Miley Cyrus here.
We don't appreciate that.
No.
We try and stick to the 60s and 70s vinyl era. We may go outside a little bit, but not as far as Miley Cyrus.
She doesn't belong on vinyl or in vinyl. That's my opinion.
Good point.
Okay.
But until next time, thanks for listening.
See ya. Thank you so much for listening to Classic Vinyl Podcast. And don't forget to subscribe on Spotify or Apple Podcast or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Follow us on Instagram at Classic Vinyl Podcast for updates, and also share us with your music-loving friends.